But he's leading somewhere because, you know, for the very first time, NNPC is explaining to the people. We had Honorable Pt.2 side. He said, well, they had, several occasions invited the NNPC to the House, and they've not been able to get the desired response from the NNPC. But the NNPC media chief was on Sunrise Daily, and they've been talking, and they had a world press conference. So without this correspondence, don't you think we wouldn't have been able to actually know the true workings of the NNPC?
I tell you that without this controversy, you will still know. Because, yes, I will tell you, you see, the Federal Ministry of Information creates platforms monthly or so for every ministry and member of the public to raise questions. Those are good platforms, and it's civil enough, and it's also responsible enough. But you see, let me give you an illustration. Maybe I can drive my point home. There is only one ship of the nation, captained by President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. Nigerians are in that ship. All the CBN, NNPC, National Assembly, they are all in that ship. Have you ever been on a village and you consciously try to create a hole that the water can flow, that your ship will sink? Except you have other motives.
Who's trying to create the hole? Because the CBN would be the one screaming that the NNPC was trying to create a hole. So in order for them not to create that hole for us not to sink, they raise an alarm.
Now I put it to you in a different way. You see, if we are collectively responsible, we must work assiduously, conduct ourselves in decorum, in unity of purpose, which is the essence and the pillar of government, to make sure that we do not sink at all. Whatever input and contribution we want to do must be done with the import that we must sail to coast. And I put it to you that most of these actors, for example, you see the head of one part of the legislature, you know, lampooning the president as if he's not part of that government. You know, you see another agency raising issues and putting it in the public domain as if it's not part of that government. I feel that is not acceptable.
You know,
it's not acceptable. I'm not saying that things should be swept under the carpet, but I'm saying that there are sufficient platform. Like I've told you what happens in those companies that are sustained almost 10 decades. They had issues, they have developmental issues, they have internal problems, but they exploited the internal mechanism to resolve those conflicts.
There are two different things, sir, because you're talking about individual companies. If that is the case, then
those companies are
just a moment, the CBN will be one company and they seem to be resolving whatever internal problems they have. We have not heard about any crisis within the CBN. But to my point, you also seem to be indicting the federal government here, because you're saying... Yes, because I asked you a question as to what exactly is happening. I pointed out the fact that this letter was addressed to the president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, and that the NNPC also claims to have responded to a query that was issued to it by the president, and they have explained themselves. This reconciliation you are saying is the first thing that ought to have been done. Who do you think should have done the reconciliation?
You see, you see, I'm not indicting the federal government. Both parties. You know, the first letter from the central bank, I queried, was not necessary because there are platforms to resolve it. Now, the federal government have queried the NNPC to respond to that letter, just as they did in their press conference in Procha to lay the facts bare. You know, even with all that they say that ordinarily they do not want to join issue in the public and whatever, but at least they made their points, and it became their word against the word of the CBN, in which the authority to say, okay, we are satisfied, is lie with the presidency, who in the first instance gave these leaders in these two institutions mandate.
What we're saying is that right now, from what we hear, meetings are being held between the FRS, the DPR, the NNPC, the CBN, and I also believe members of cabinet of President Goodluck Jonathan. If that is the case, shouldn't this meeting have been held as far back as, say, October, for instance, to be able to reconcile this, so that even if this letter were to leak, because it leaked sometime in December, they would already have a reconciliation and present it to the public that, yes, this issue was raised as far back as September, but right now we already have a reconciliation and there is really no controversy.
You see, I retrace my point again. The CBN governor that originated that letter, I insist, has not explored the internal mechanism fully. And
what internal mechanism are we talking
about? If you have an issue, if the issue at stake, even when you now put the 2 letters and the reaction, listen to me, and the NNPC reactions to it, you find out that what they have not put in the public domain, which I think is a conscious attempt to erode public confidence, is that if the central bank has issues that borders on clarifications, the import of the letter and the way it has been presented to the public, or even the way the letter has been written and now in the public domain, suggests as if, oh, they have stolen Nigerian money again. What about 32 billion?
Mr. Ojomu, we're talking about $49.8 billion.
Yes.
That is the alarm that the CBN is raising.
Yes.
The language of the letter says, yes, I am constrained to write. I mean, one would think that if for 18 months these monies have not been remitted, do you think that the CBN would not have made any attempts to reach the NNPC?
Let me tell you, correspondence is one way to communicate. They are verbal communication, just as correspondence. Most people try to apply correspondence for certain advantages, so that for the people you have seen. Are
you saying, Mr. Ojomu, just a moment, are you saying that if 49.8 billion naira is truly missing, you as a Nigerian, you don't want to know about that?
You see, because let me tell you, that's the bottom line of what I'm trying to say. I ask you again, was the money missing?
If it is truly missing, I mean, right now we're all interested parties, aren't we?
See, we're all interested party, but what I'm saying is that it is not responsible for any leader of an institution to suggest to my senses, to suggest to my senses that somebody has stolen Nigerian money when a proper investigation that's supposed to be done internally. When you dish out information to the public domain, it must be information that has been tested, established. You or your station have taken certain positions about, maybe a police arrest someone who has not been confirmed whether to be an armed robber, and they have adjudicated the man and said, we will shot him because we know. Why should you come to the public domain that if the institutions is part of government? CBN is not a company. Mr. Jones. It's an institution of government. The matter supposed to be treated internally, even if it requires. I'm not aware that the CBN governor need any extra mileage to have audience with the president.
Mr. Ojomu,
who gave them all mandates?
Let me come here, Mr. Ojomu.
I don't think they should be insulting our sensibilities with this noise. Somebody has stealing money when they are not verified.
Mr. Ojomu, in 2010, yes, in that letter,
yes,
the CBN governor said, as far back as 2010,
yes,
I have verbally expressed deep concerns about what appears to be huge shortfalls in remittances to the Federation account, in spite of the strong recovery in oil price, as far back as 2010.
Yes.
Now, the boss to the CBN and the NNPC is the president.
Yes.
So there are those who will ask, having had a conversation with you, who is my brother, if we're not getting along, who should I talk to? The father. True or false?
Of course, yes.
And that's what the CBN governor did.
Yes.
So why are you saying he did wrong?
You see, what I'm saying is that there is no, if this fresh letter you're referring to 2010 is 2013, I mean that's 3 years after. I don't want to believe that there have been an inaction on the part of government. I don't want to believe, because I'm not speaking for government. You understand? I don't want to believe that for 3 years there has been inaction, and if 3 years after is still, that's what I'm talking about. Import. Every communication must have an import. What is the objective? If it is not gaining high moral ground for future political mileage, what is the import of that reference? It is not possible that there will be action within government for 3 years that a matter has been raised. And that's why I said, and I still insist, that people who are managing the institutions of government must be responsible to know that they must all to coast together.
I think I get your point here.
Yes,
you're talking
these
about
punches at the presidency, tantrums at the president, trying to behave as if you are not part of the people running the affairs of the state, trying to say that I should be on a high moral ground. I think it's unfair.
Yes, I think.
And it's not correct. It's not going to pay anybody anything.
Mr. Ojomu.
After assaulting our psychology with this trying to say, I'm the one that tied the thief.
Let me come in here because
the way you help Nigeria.
A moment here, Mr. Ojomu, because the way you put it now, we're talking about a concerted effort from every team member to making the nation work.
Yes.
But in a case where
without assaulting our psychology.
Yes, in a case where someone or an agency tries to insult us or assault our psychology, let me use a word there, and you try to make them see reasons, knowing full well that you have your stewardship. You will account when you finally leave office, and a whole lot will be said about you. Yes. And you realize that some other agency, sister agency as they put it, is trying to jeopardize your effort. Who do you complain to?
You see,
the president.
There's a channel.
Right? And he is taken to that channel.
Yes.
And if anyone has chosen to leak this particular letter, because it's quite different from President Obasanjo's letter to President Goodluck Jonathan, which is an open letter. So if anyone has chosen to leak the same letter, the way even those in government have also said that the bulletproof matter was also leaked, isn't it time for them to look inwards and say, who is this mole? Or should we also be talking about the matter, whether it is true or false? But because in this case, people must explain to the Nigerian people first before we talk about any leakages. So that is the question here. Mr. Sanusi has done what a lot of people would say is good and some would say is bad. But we're looking at the matter between the CBN and the issue raised by CBN against NNPC. Are you saying we shouldn't talk about it?
No, I'm not saying you should not talk about it, but this is it. You see, if what let's say, trying to be a devil's advocate, let's say that Sanusi writing that letter says constrained is because he has found a conflict between what he consider the ideals, and what is realistically going on, and they feel his conscience cannot pick it. The honorable way, if that is the truth, and that is your intrinsic value, what you believe.
You want him to resign?
Yeah, yes, you take your exit. I cannot be part of this village. So that when there's a wreckage, I can be on a higher moral ground.
So that
I was a Nostradamus.
So that the mess can continue.
No, but that is an assumption. That's an assumption that there's a mess. Because what I'm telling you is that every communication process, the author must have an import. I'm not convinced that the import of Sanusi's letter is to attain good governance. Rather, is to say, I caught a thief, or I raised the first alarm. So I must be on a higher moral ground for a future political mileage.
Just a moment, sir.
Yes.
Assuming this letter never came to public domain, would we have this conversation about what his motive was?
What his motive was?
Yes.
Of course, there will be no need, and that's what I talked about.
No, just a moment.
Yes.
If that is the case, what that means is that you're not exactly quarreling with the letter, you're quarreling with the fact that it came to public domain.
No. I strongly feel that the method of communication employed to achieve his objective was not correct. He did that for some mileage. Either it's political or, to throw punches at some people.
That's your thinking?
Yes, that's my thinking. Because I believe that the objectives that land letter set out to achieve can be achieved verbally. And that's why I gave you an illustration that in the social balance, if they treat themselves as one government, and one occupants of the ship of the nation, that must sail to coast, that must not sink, you can resolve that matter because he has enough unfettered access to see the president in trying to carry out the responsibilities of his office effectively.
Well, this is where we have to leave it, but before you leave, you're still a member of the PDP, isn't it?
Sure.
Are you worried that we're having so many other leakages coming from the presidency?
Of course, I'm concerned. I'm genuinely concerned because my own take on this is that people have begun to design what I call their own selfish agenda. So people have taken positions, and they are taking undue advantage of the liberal disposition of the president to do what they like. Everybody tried to use his platform, that we are the one holding this one, try to use it through a manipulative process to say, okay, let's give dog a bad name to hang it.
Well, anyway, I think we'd like to thank you, Bode Ojomu. He's a former acting National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, and he's been speaking with us on this alleged unremitted funds by the NNPC. Sunrise Dilla takes a break, and we'll return. Join us again.